Good afternoon. My name is Aaliyah Stevenson. I'm the Chief Programs Officer for the Foundation for Black Women's Wellness. Our purpose is to empower a generation of well Black women. We do this by energizing and mobilizing Black women to transform their lives through education, advocacy, and powerful partnerships. My work history has been centered on public health, as well as organizational development, embedding health and racial equity into agency policies, practices, and programs. I am a graduate of the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where I received my bachelor's in journalism, master's in rehab counseling, and my school counseling certification. I'm extremely excited to be here today representing the Foundation for Black Women's Wellness and to center Black women's voices in this important conversation around racism on the campus and beyond, and incredibly excited to learn with and from my fellow panelists.
Hi, welcome. My name is Claudia Marte. I'm a mental health provider with University Health Services, and my focus is students of color. I work with UW students, and in the mental health setting, whether it's individual counseling, group counseling, we have single sessions where people come in and talk about what's happening and going on. I'm very passionate about my work, and previous to working at UW-Madison, I also worked as a resource specialist in the Madison Area Technical College for over 13 years. I've also worked in Journey Mental Health as a crisis worker, and I've also worked in adolescent treatment program with North Star Mental Health in Madison. So I have lots of years working in the community. I'm a Spanish-speaking provider and grew up in New York City, but have been in Madison for over 16 years now. I'm very dedicated to this community, and I'm also excited about talking about this important topic with my panelists here.
Hi, my name is Carl Wesley. I'm the president and CEO for the Center for Self-Sufficiency, located in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, where our mission is to provide a foundation for people to actualize their hope and motivation to access a good life. We work with individuals throughout the community. We also work with individuals who are returning citizens from incarceration. We work with their families. We help individuals build up themselves and re-emerge back into their families. We also work with youth on the other side of stopping them from getting accessed by the criminal justice system by providing them many interventions, mentoring, pregnancy prevention, violence prevention, different things like that. My background, prior to me taking on this role, I was assistant director of the People Program at UW-Madison. And prior to that, I did EDI work as the Chief Diversity Inclusion Officer interim at UW-Platteville, and also did retention work as well as pre-college director and a litany of other jobs throughout my career. I received my education from UW-Platteville, bachelor's degree in criminal justice, and it's been so long ago. And I have a master's degree in adult education and a second master's degree in counseling psychology. And I have a doctoral degree from Edgewood in higher education leadership. I'm excited today to be a part of this panel. I've actually been on a panel with members of this panel before, so this is exciting. I have a special heart for the division. I was there working in the division when it was created, and to see it blossom to what it's gone to. And I know that the sky's the limit with some of the leadership and the new things that they're doing over there. And I'm excited to be a part of this and excited to engage in this conversation today.
So we wanted to open up the conversation and to talk about stress as a public health crisis. And though the idea of recognizing racism as a detriment to public health isn't new, it has gained traction since the police killing of Mr. George Floyd and the subsequent protests that have happened around the country. And on top of that, people of color, African Americans in particular, have been disproportionately affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. Governor Evers, a few months ago, when he declared this as a public health crisis, said, we must fix what we know is broken in our society. And so words do matter. And so stop calling it racism as an issue to racism as a crisis acknowledges the disproportionate outcomes in health and education and how that impacts brown and brown communities across America. And I think the fact that we're at a point where we and some states are finally making this declaration and calling it a public health crisis is a start to finally acknowledge the pervasive systemic racism in our country that shows up in all of these areas. Again, education, housing, economic opportunities, public safety. And now we add COVID, the pandemic, and we clearly see how the health disparities have impacted our Black and brown communities as a result of systemic racism in the country.
Claudia, I'm so excited that you set the groundwork to talk about what Governor Evers said, which is honestly, before we can drill into the significance of what the global pandemic or the police killing of Black people, we need to name and state, and specific to my work and the Foundation for Black Women's Wellness, where Black women's health was or Black families' health was or is prior, so our starting point. And the truth is that Black women's health in Wisconsin, Black families' health in Wisconsin was already in a state of emergency with Black women and families overrepresented in all major categories of disease and illness, so including hypertension, heart disease, diabetes, cancer, stroke, obesity, etc. And of course, more likely than their white peers to live with and die from treatable and preventable illnesses and at younger ages. We were already leading the nation in Black infant mortality. We were already experiencing worse maternal outcomes than our white peers and a widening life expectancy gap. We were already a national leader in racial inequality. And as a result, of course, experiencing incredible inequities and disparities, as Claudia pointed out, in employment, education, housing, health, wealth. And we also know that Black women and mothers were already disproportionately heads of households and primary or sole breadwinners. So just to reiterate what Claudia was saying, it's not shocking or surprising then that this global pandemic means that Black women are experiencing elevated income and housing insecurity and has exacerbated incredible mental and physical distress. And then of course you add the additional layer of police killing of Black people, and the mental and physical toll on Black women's bodies is, indescribable. And Claudia mentioned Mr. George Floyd, but then we think about Breonna Taylor, Atiana Jefferson, or Rosser, etc. We don't hear much about these women, and that is simply because we live in a racist, patriarchal society that doesn't value the bodies or lives of Black women. What excites me most about the work of the Foundation for Black Women's Wellness is that it has moved the conversation around Black women's health from a whisper to a movement. And I think all of us on this panel live for the day when folks no longer say, I didn't know that was true about Wisconsin, all these disparity data. Because when you stand by idly, then you're complicit, right, in causing the harm. And so I'll end it there. Carl?
And I would also submit that with the access to information right now, there's not a naivety of ignorance. It's willful ignorance. When you don't know in this day and age, especially with everything that's happening around you, it's because you choose to not know. You choose to turn a blind eye. So when we look at these disparities and look at where the numbers that my colleagues have articulated, where we are with all of this despair as it relates to people of color, and particularly Black people in this talk, one has to reconcile why, right? Because I don't think most people won't argue these stats, because these stats are coming from official places. These stats are coming from governmental entities and agencies that are counting and tracking this information. So we're not going to get a whole lot of pushback on whether or not the infant mortality rate is this, or whether or not diabetes and healthcare and access to affordable housing and lead-free pipes in their homes. We're not going to get a big pushback on whether or not it's happening. The pushback is why. Right? The pushback is why, because the idea is that you can only take two positions. You can take the position that there are gross systemic inequities, that are taking place that have been pervasive and happening since the onset of this country as it relates to other, and that other would be non-white. Or you have to inject the dissonance to make your thoughts okay by saying these people are choosing this in this part of their behavior that is impacting their health, that's impacting their outcomes as it relates to wealth, as it relates to housing, as it relates to so many different things that we just hit on. And that's the piece that we're not analyzing. That's the why part. And we know that the data and the science will tell us that it would be the first part, not the second, right? We all know that, and that's the part, is that we're having a time of our lives convincing people that it's not that we are part of a culture of pathology in which we're getting gunned down by the police on a daily basis, unarmed, or that we live in neighborhoods that receive saturated policing. We know logically that with uniform crime reports and self-report surveys, that white people are engaged in crime and the same type of crime and engaged in drug use and different things at the same rates as people of color. So then if we know that, then we have to inject some type of dissonance to make what's happening okay. And that's the piece that I know we'll unpack as we move forward in this conversation.
And then in thinking about, we just laid out what is a national issue, but also there's some really unique pieces to what's happening in Wisconsin. So we're going to talk really Wisconsin specific. There's something unique that's happening here. I think that's a nice way of saying it. As I said in my introduction, I went to school here at Wisconsin. I was a Powers Knapp Scholar. I grew up down the street from the university next to West High School. I thought that given that I grew up in a predominantly white state, city, school, I was going to be prepared for the university here specifically, but I was mistaken. There was something happening there with the intersection of culture, race, gender, income, parental status. I became a mother my sophomore year. I never felt more alone, unwelcomed, angry, and unwell. And still now, as an adult, I watch my kids walking through the same experience, right? And as an adult, my experience currently is no different. There's nowhere to go or to be that aligns with our needs for acceptance and safety and feeling welcome. So we have to create our own spaces to heal and to thrive. And that is what we're doing at the Foundation for Black Women's Wellness. The Foundation for Black Women's Wellness is building a policy platform around what Black women need to be well, a well Black woman in Wisconsin. This platform it will be created by listening to Black women in Wisconsin share their experiences and their needs around health and wellness, both those things that contribute to their wellness and those things that are barriers to their wellness. And so we've partnered up with the Local Voices Network and recorded and transcribed these conversations in order to advocate for Black women. And just to bring another voice or other voices into this conversation, I want to play a few of the recordings of the Black women we spoke with during these conversations to share their experiences, specifically of living in Wisconsin, as a way, again, to bring their voices into this space. And I would invite my colleagues to share what comes up from them from their personal and professional contexts. So I am going to do that right now.
People were, sort of speaking to connection. And that has been very difficult, I think, in Madison. I've lived all over the country and the world, in fact. And I think this is the hardest place. And I've always, because we're Black women, right, we internalize and we say, oh, it's us, let's mold ourselves to fit this place and adapt. And it keeps hitting me, right? And it really is a drain on your wellness. You talk about your blood pressure going up, your stress going up, and then not having this piece that is so critical to wellness, which is people you can connect with, people who understand, people who can be supportive and will be supportive. And so I think, like you're saying, that is is really hard. And then when I first arrived, when my family first arrived, we didn't have like the foundation, right? We didn't have any of these things. The few of us who were here were so spread out. Mary, I think probably my mother knows you because your name looks really familiar. So, we just didn't have a way to connect. And then we'd get all busy, and then we'd find ourselves alone in white space, and we would just be surviving. I mean, literally like surviving, right? Day to day to day. And maybe we could reach out once a year and talk to somebody and have a moment where we're like, okay, sisterhood, thank you. Thank you so much. I needed this wine. So I think that has been, over time, it's that buildup of being sick, right? Of not being well, that just keeps you in this constant state of unwellness. I never get a chance to like build into wellness.
Thoughts as you reflect on both my experience being here and another Black woman's experience here in the context of the university, or in the context of working here, in the context of living and raising families here. This experience of not being well, not finding spaces that are supportive.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that video feed. And one of the things that comes up for me as I help students that are coming into a mental health space understand, why am I feeling this way? What is it? And then the constant invalidation that happens when they enter a classroom, when they hear all lives matter, when they're questioned as to why do you feel the need to protest right now, and having to constantly find answers to these questions, having to justify why this hurts me, why this impacts me the way that it does, as I also have to be a student and continue in my journey educationally, as I sit and reflect on how COVID is impacting my family right now, and how I choose to be careful around entering different spaces. And so when I hear this, I think of all that students have to unpack every day. And when you come into an institution due to your merit, to have to be questioned and to have to hear, and this is not just one student, I hear this multiple times, which also validates my experience as being a Black Latina, that the perception is somehow you were here on a scholarship, that you don't somehow deserve the spot that you got. And so hearing that audio resonates with a lot of people of color, and in terms of their experience, and always having to feel like they have to justify why this hurts me, why this is important to me, why me wearing a shirt that says Black Lives Matter is not an attack to you. It's simply validating my existence as a human.
And you're right on the money, Claudia. This is, when I think about the experiences that I've had, that so many students of mine had, that they described at Madison as well as UW-Platteville, it's a constant psychological noise that's ever present when you're just moving throughout your day. And there's a ton of different things that are can be barriers and challenges as a student, just being a student regardless of your background, right? It's not, we know that college and coming and juggling different classes and different things and coming into yourself and trying to find about your identity and different things like that, all those things are taxing. And then when you add on the psychological noise of being a person of color and being otherized and feeling that you're treated and relegated to the back of the bus, so to speak, almost at every point in your college experience, it can be very difficult. And, you know, it's what is like really bothersome to me is that we know that students of color come into these places in these spaces and universities, and they don't do as well as their white counterparts as it relates to graduation rates, as it relates to performance and things like that. And one side it justifies it by saying they weren't ready. They weren't supposed to be here. They weren't academically prepared. And no one speaks to the environment in which they had to come and weather some impossible conditions. And, you know, we see students of color, we see students like you, like myself, and many others who come through and make it through in spite of the way the campus is set up, not because of the way the campus is set up. And the evidence is we'd see more of Claudia's and Aaliyah's and Carl's coming out of the university and not, you know, going home and you know, leaving out because they had so many issues and had to deal with so many things. Now, mind you, of course, you're not gonna eliminate attrition by any means, but you can mitigate it by creating environments that are inclusive, that are welcoming, that are intentional for all students to come and engage. And then there is, whenever you have a particular group that's having issues that are germane to that group, you make adjustments to address the needs of that group. But, you know, you have another side of people who push back on that, as if the adjustments being made for a particular group hurts another group. And that's what it seems to be, the idea that if I help or give or do something extra for one side, that it's taken away from another side. And it shouldn't be that way, but unfortunately it is.
So true, so true. And at the very context about it, we were talking about the experience again of being, you know, what you're talking about is equity, really. It's access to the same opportunities as everybody else. But in the context of race, just how pervasive this experience is. And I'm just glancing at some of the questions coming through on the chat and thinking about, and I think you framed it really well, as we think about any measure, any indicator where a group of people have a disparate outcome or disparate, something's wrong, something's standing out. I think the question we need to ask ourselves, I know the question we need to ask ourselves, is what is it about the environment? What is it about the system or the context that is failing this group of people versus what is it about this person or these people that, you know, I was just thinking about, what's his name from California, John, it'll come to me. He came out here and did a speech. I'll get his name in a minute, but he said you have to ask yourself, is it that Wisconsin has the worst Black people in the nation, just the worst Black people? Like if you're Black and you're the worst, you come and move here and then you have bad kids or something happens? Or is it that Wisconsin is uniquely situated in a way, in a progressive liberal way that ignores, glances over, washes over, where white people are doing so well that it causes these disparate outcomes? And I think that's the question we need to be asking ourselves as well. I want to play one more recording from the voices of that we captured across the state, and just want to hear your guys' reflections again. Oops. Yeah.
I think for me, the barriers that I have, you know, it's just being a Black woman. I think just being a Black woman is the barrier that I have. Because I feel like as I walk through the world, like people don't listen to me as a Black woman. Whether it's the job place or the doctor's office or just in the world, I feel like I constantly have to advocate for myself. You know, granted there are great people in the world too. You see some great people sometimes, but the likelihood of being in contact or finding these great people are really low compared to all the barriers that I face daily as a Black woman. And it's just exhausting. I would say it's really exhausting, not being listened to, or constantly having to prove your point, fighting for things that you shouldn't be fighting for. It's just really exhausting. Yeah, I think being a Black woman is the the real barrier that I have. Because sometimes I feel like if I was not if I was not Black, or if I was not a woman, there are things that would have come easily, to me, or I could have navigated this world. Like things would have been easier. But those, being a woman and then being Black, adapt. And I think for me, the barriers.
Oops. I think there's so many things in what she said around intersectionality of gender and race and a number of things. But so who I was thinking of is John Powell from the Othering and Belonging Institute, who said that. But what really comes up for me in this recording is that we often get asked, what can I do as an ally? And folks in institutions or who see these negative outcomes, doctors, teachers, name the institution, what can I do, what can I do? And in all the conversations that we've had so far, there's an underlying theme that came up in this one: listening and believing. Simple. Listening and believing Black women. Believing what their experience is true, starting there is the number one thing. It gets in that root cause. It gets into that earlier conversation we had with Robin DeAngelo at the onset of today. What is about it that is stopping you? We know some of it comes from training or learning or perception, but what is that root cause in you that stops us from listening and believing Black women and their experience? So I could unpack a lot about that, but I'm going to pass it to my colleagues.
Yeah, and I wanted to bring up the first question we have from the chat in terms of how can I say things in a way that my predominantly white department doesn't feel like I'm just complaining. And, to your point, Aaliyah, we need allies. We need people to hear and validate our experiences. And when I talk to clients, there's a sense of responsibility. Like I have to do something about all of the things that I'm seeing. And so that question is so relevant to what's happening now, where you want to see change, you want to break down some of these systemic things that have been happening in programs when it comes to faculty hiring, when it comes to opportunities and access for other students of color. And for a lot of students in certain fields, they're still the only or one of the few in their programs. And so when I speak up, why does it feel like I'm complaining? Where are your allies in your program? Who can do some of that work for you? It shouldn't just be you advocating for the needs of Black and Brown communities. There should be others there at the table. And so when I ask this question in that space of counseling, learning to resource, who can share that burden with you? Because you're carrying a lot too. You're worrying about your family. You're worrying about, the state of the country and feeling hopeful. And so who in your program can be an ally and come with you, come along you, or speak during these meetings so that you are not the only one carrying this sense of responsibility?
I agree 100%. But I will say that this is, I was told by my mentors that this work is a burden. It's a special burden, but it's a burden nonetheless. And when you decide to open your eyes and pay attention to what's happening to the world around you and people around you, then you have to make a decision whether or not to do something about it or lull yourself back to the slumber you once were in. And I mean, that's a personal decision that individuals have to make. You know, I don't sit in judgment for anyone, but when you make the decision that you are going to be boisterous against any inequities and disparities and things that, you know, I mean, just at the basic sense are not right. When you decide to be the voice against things that are wrong, then you welcome the consequences. I mean, and that's the burden, right? Because so then it becomes the burden to be the person that speaks up. But if you don't speak up, then who speaks up, right? And so then there is always the risk of speaking up and being labeled as the squeaky wheel or the person who's always complaining, or, you know, those type of things. I've often, as a person of color, being one of the only ones, have had that label. You know, I've had to, in my, you know, years of growing and learning, figure out ways to be strategic in planting the message, but I never stopped planting the message. I never stopped pushing it, whether I push it from a quiet stance to inject it, or whether I just stand up and be vocal. The message has to be continuously pushed. And then there's also a need to re-examine our allyship. What do we mean when we say ally? I know some of our good indigenous brothers and sisters are calling for accomplices rather than allies. You know, I need you to be in there with me. And you know, I mean, if you're deciding to come engaged, then engage. You know, this is not a part-time struggle for many people. Many people deal with this on a daily basis. And then unfortunately, you know, when you're in environments like Madison, Platteville, Milwaukee campus, you know, there's very little opportunity to take off the armor and just relax and to just feel okay and just feel at home. I mean, that's saying a lot. I mean, just think about it. If you, as a student or as a person, faculty, staff, or even a community member, the feeling you feel when you get home, and like that you get home and it's warm and just feel good, and everybody in this space is welcoming, and you feel love and you feel accepted and you feel like you belong there. And to be able to go into an environment and navigate that for 4 and now maybe 6 years without opportunity to take off your armor, and then the places that are designed to give you some of that relief are being challenged on a daily basis, whether it be in our court systems or in public opinion, as to whether or not divisions like the Diversity and Equity EDI work, whether they're actually valuable. We're seeing through the executive orders that some of this work that we know is the work that's critical to addressing many of these issues and systemic inequities are rooted in education. Right? Many of our K through 12 educations were subpar at best as it relates to dealing with these issues, right? And so if we don't have an opportunity even at the higher ed level, even at the level of getting going to engage in work, if there's laws and executive orders that stop us from engaging in the learning and teaching of this work, we got a pushback that's set to build the barriers higher than what they already are, and that's something that I think that we're seeing on a daily basis, and at the national level, and then we're seeing some here at the state level with regard to what's going on from the state piece. So I mean, I think it's some tough work, don't get me wrong, and it's not for the faint at heart, and but it's definitely meaningful work. It's work that makes you feel good about doing the right thing regardless of what's taking place and what public opinion is around, doing what you know is right, I think is major. I did want to hit, there was a question that talked about the role of trauma. I think that transgenerational trauma undergirds all of this, right? I mean, because this, and what undergirds that, in my opinion, is comprehensive racism and the ideology of white supremacy, right? Since its inception, the racism is fundamental to the core belief system in the formation of the United States of America. Because if we look back at what happened in the formation of the United States of America, there was Native American land dispossession and genocide. So when we start the formation of this country, racism and white supremacy is foundational. And if we engaged in all of us who engage in a K through 12 instruction, or even K through 16 or beyond, you can go through every single level and come out with a doctoral degree and never learn any of this. That's the travesty. But I definitely think that to speak to the question, trauma is the outcome of these things. And because this is not acute stress. This is long-term, constant stress that's built upon and daily exacerbated by daily issues that may be macro or micro. So, I mean, yeah, definitely this is a issue. I'm a pause and let my colleagues get in because I can get rolling.
Yeah, and I just wanted to highlight what psychological science tells us about what happens to us as Black people when we experience race-based stress and trauma. And so it's very similar to what we call post-traumatic stress disorder. The distress can cause flashbacks, hypervigilance. And when I talk about hypervigilance, I could give you an example of a client that is afraid to go outside and walk because when she wants to go walk, she thinks of what's happening in our country today and how it impacts Black people differently. And so walking in a space, walking outside in State Street or wherever you are and feeling like something is going to happen. Nightmares, heart palpitations, poor sleep, anxiety. But where PTSD can be caused by a single event, racial stress is ongoing, it's pervasive, it's generationally transmitted, and it affects both individuals and collective communities. And so beyond PTSD symptoms, racial trauma is enduring and re-triggering. So every time we see something on our phones, breaking news, and we see another innocent Black person not here on this earth anymore, that hits your body in a way. Sometimes you lose sleep. You see the face of that person and you think of your cousin, your sister, your mother, your brother. And sometimes that fear could be paralyzing. And as students, we have to go on about our day, every day. And your professor doesn't know how these things are impacting you. And so sometimes helping that student move beyond, like, what do I do with this? And how do I move? How do I continue to live? How do I continue to thrive in Wisconsin? And so the first step is acknowledging that systemic racism is real. Let's stop fighting about whether it's real or not, whether this experience was made up for some and not others. That's the question. You know, that's one of the big issues that I see today, where we're still fighting about did this happen or not, based on who you are and the color of your skin.
the perfect transition, Claudia. I feel like you've already perfectly segued us into the last piece, and as of the questions and the comments. So I'm going to try to piggyback. There's some questions around intersectionality in the movement and more inclusive movement, and then talking about specifically as a Black woman. So I want to try to touch on both those things. So the beautiful thing about the Foundation for Black Women's Wellness, it was founded off of the founder and CEO, Lisa Payton Care's mother, dying of heart failure at 64, that sparked this movement, that then sparked Black Women's Wellness Day, which we just celebrated our 12th year. And the intersection of that movement are Black women and folks who have either visible or invisible disabilities. So I think there are spaces that are centering me, myself, sitting here, heart failure, heart disease. So I think what we need to do a better job is stating our truths and bringing people into, so it's more accepted, it's more vocal, it's more visual. But certainly at the Foundation for Black Women's Wellness, there's a holistic look at it. And then someone says, as a Black woman, I'm in a hostile environment, what can I do outside of voting? And my response to that is, I think the number one thing we need to do as Black women is to heal, is to create spaces for ourselves in this. And so we want to move beyond surviving to thriving, right? So at the Foundation for Black Women's Wellness, we create intentional spaces for Black women to build community, to access information they need to be well, to advocate for themselves, their families, their communities. So we do this in our Wednesday morning coffee series, which are virtual. We do this in our Tuesday walking groups, which right now are folks got to be 6 feet apart or walking individually. We do this in our events. I just mentioned the Foundation's Black Women's Wellness Day, which we just celebrated our 12th year. We do this by promoting and hosting fitness and nutrition classes for Black women. We do this by hosting financial wellness series. We do this by advocating for mental wellness. So essentially a holistic approach to the mind, body, spirit experience. And we do that in the pursuit of empowering, energizing, mobilizing a nation of well Black women. And so my first and foremost, and we've heard the cheesy sayings constantly. I mean, when you get on a plane, they're like, put your mask on before you help anybody else's. And that's the number one thing I want to say. Taking care of yourself, it's a revolutionary act to love yourself, to pour into yourself. Someone has also said in here, I don't have the response or the energy to respond against every racist thing that happens, nor should you. Take care of yourself. Ask yourself, is this a battle that I need to or want to fight? If I'm in the checkout line and I'm never going to see this person again, do I want to invest in that conversation? Is it my responsibility? Now, if it's to protect another, a young person, Black person, whatever, it's a whole different thing. But if it's someone, do I want to invest in educating this white person? You know, those are questions we have to ask ourselves. So I want to begin with the fundamental thing that we need to do as people of color, as Black women, is to invest in ourselves and in our health. No one is coming in to save us. There's no Superman. There's no Prince Charming, right? We need to invest in ourselves and get education, learn how to advocate, get partners and allies. We wouldn't be able to do any of the work that we're doing in the foundation without the incredible support and allyship or accomplices, I appreciate that, or co-conspirators or whatever, on individual, organizational, and systems levels in our state and beyond. So that is what I would say.
I definitely can identify with that living in a hostile environment. As I thought about this presentation today and some of the questions that were posed to us to reflect on, and thinking about the constants of trauma when we talk about the constant stressors that become post-traumatic trauma, and then that happens over generations, become a syndrome. And when I look at that as being a Black man and being socialized in this society, it can be really scary. And the scary part is not even always for me, but for my children and for my family, for my wife. Like I wouldn't say like I'm this big brave guy, but when I get pulled over by the police or I'm in certain areas or neighborhoods, even walking through my own neighborhood where I've lived for 9 years, I have a feeling of uneasiness. I'm scared to walk through my neighborhood without my dog, not because my dog is a big protector, but because I don't want people to say, "What is he doing over here?" And we see that on the national news. So it's definitely something that impacts me. And from my side is I agree wholeheartedly with Leah, is you have to work on you, because changing society is like turning a cruise liner, right? It's going to be way easier for you to work on yourself. I can work on how I react to certain things and how I really internalize things. And I think a lot of that has to do with me and my own personal identity development, especially as it relates to race. And I think that everybody needs to do that, even those who are well-meaning white folk who are looking to be allies or accomplices. There still needs to be a healing on that end as well, because we don't. If you're not fully healed, we don't want you coming to the table engaged out of guilt. When you have a full understanding and you have a full healing and you've reached autonomy, as it relates to your being white or being black or being Latino or Latina, then you're able and positioned to help others. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. When I think about Black women wellness, I think about so many families that I serve who are Black women head and raising children, male and female. And there's an adage that we say at my agency that hurt people and healed people help people. And if you're getting raised in that household of someone who's not well and doesn't even have the opportunity, access, or resources to get well, then oftentimes that's where that transgenerational trauma comes. It's handed down because of that lack of resource and lack of access.
I just wanted to quickly touch point on some of the questions related to services here at UW. And my position is a direct result of student advocacy, of saying we need providers that look like us, because some of the topics that we bring up are specific to Brown and Black communities. And so having the trust and having an environment where you feel safe to talk about certain things it's a first step. And so, yes, there are other providers with a student of color focus. If you look on our website, there are descriptions with each of our mental health providers. In addition, I also wanted to highlight certain services we have that are outside of individual therapy. We have what's called Let's Talk. And Let's Talk is offered in many different spaces where a student just simply makes an appointment, could be the day of, and it's a 30-minute conversation with a provider to talk about what's happening in the moment. And sometimes that's enough. And sometimes that provider says, you know what, you need a little bit more. Let's get you connected to services. And so I also wanted to highlight groups and the significance of community during this time so that you don't feel isolated and alone. Group therapy is a very effective intervention. Sometimes, yes, there is need for individual support, absolutely. But if you're stressed out about what's happening and how it's impacting you every day, being a student of color, and sometimes feeling isolated, in your program. Being able to be in a space with other students of color where you could normalize some of your experiences. I'm not crazy, like this is actually happening. And being able to share your experiences is also very empowering. And it's a way to continue to thrive and carry on the load that you feel. In addition, we also have processing spaces. There are some processing spaces coming up as election is nearing. So we create these spaces as a way to reach students that for some reason or the other can't access care, and continue to advocate students and whoever is listening, continue to advocate for services so that we could continue to grow. And if more services are needed, advocacy is a way to ensure that services are created.
I was just looking at another question. It just builds so beautifully off what you shared, Claudia. It talks about this, many of these things are long-term, counseling or being in community. What are little things you can do every day regularly to stay well? And I think when I use the language, just to be clear, being in community, it means being connected. So it doesn't have to be a physical removal of yourself to somewhere else. In fact, it could be Zoom, could be FaceTime, could be text messages or phone call. Being in community is just having that acknowledgement and that awareness that you're not alone in this. So checking in with the people who fill your cup, who give you that sense of identity and that sense of or shared identity or shared experience that help you through. So that's what I just want to be clear about being in community. So it's not a long-term thing. It's a daily practice for me of just calling my mom or calling a girlfriend and just checking in. Other things are just really personal to folks. Being in nature is really important to me. So getting out, taking a walk. When it was nice, gardening. When it was nice, lakeside. Some of those things. And any type of physical activity, exercising, walking, lifting weights is really, these are, again, very personal. But for me, it's trying to find a balance of things that are filling your social, mental, emotional, spiritual. So for me, in my house, I have an altar. It has objects from all the places where I'm from. So Japan, Norway, Africa, has pictures of my ancestors, and just a daily ritual of lighting candles and being present and really channeling all the beautiful intentions that my ancestors had for me and have for my kids. I'm with you, Carl. Half of it is worrying about how our children are going to walk through this world, in particular in our current state. So those are the little things that you can do every day. The thing that I offer up is that you find a balance in between those that take care of all the areas of wellness for you.
I echo that. I think for me, it's just trying to be mindful. I meditate in the mornings. I pray at night. I pray all the time. I lift weights in my garage now since COVID. But figuring out those things, and because it's basically, those things that we talk about that we reference to release stress, right? Those are the daily things, the different things that you do, whether it go for a run or a jog, when you have those acute stressors, right? But when you have these long-term constant stressors, then you have to have a ritual to release that long-term constant stress. And there's the other factor is nutrition. Nutrition is big. Nutrition is huge. What you put in your body also can impact and control how you feel and how you internalize things. So being mindful of what you put in your body, vitamins and different things like that, those are some of those, what I would say, small things or little things you can do every day to address some of these issues. But I do want to say that when I say we work on ourselves and do those things, that's me speaking from an individual standpoint, like when I'm talking to students. But when I'm talking to the leadership, there's work on the leadership side as well. So, I don't want you to wait and sit in the lurch of dealing with all the things that you got to deal with, all the bullets flying your way while we work on and changing the environment. So these are the things that I want students and people to do to stay healthy while simultaneously we work on leadership to be intentional about the creation of inclusive environments.
Absolutely. And just a couple of the questions related to what can I do in my current work as a professor or staff member. I think messaging matters. Checking in matters. And it's surprising to me when I hear clients say, you know, some professors are not even acknowledging the stress that we hold from having to do all of the Zoom work, having to take all of our exams at home timed, and just the extra layer of stress that this causes. So being a human and checking in and just asking students, taking 2 minutes of lecture time to just acknowledge the fact that we're holding on to a lot of stress. If you notice that students are not turning things in or struggling, it would help to send an email. You know, I always stress the importance of self-advocacy, but sometimes taking that step is really hard. And I'm talking about our first generation students that have to learn all of these things on top of being a student. Resourcing and being able to send an email sometimes is really hard. And so if they're with me and I know that that's a barrier for them, taking time in the session to craft the email is a way to get that action going. But I think from a staff member or professor standpoint, acknowledging that we're all holding a lot and just offering that level of support. Because sometimes a syllabus could feel very rigid. You know, it has all the due dates and you have to do this and this and this. But it's not acknowledging the fact that we're living through a pandemic. It's not acknowledging all of that maybe someone lost a loved one recently. And so just checking in and asking, is there anything you need? Or if you notice that a student hasn't turned something in, do you need anything from me or do you need more time? That goes a long, long way. And in terms of self-care, self-care is so important, and I'm happy we're talking about it. There are 4 areas that I like to focus on: the physical, emotional, social, and spiritual components, and creating what I call a mental health kit or a self-care kit. So when you divide those 4 areas, I always like to start with, how do you incorporate self-care throughout your week to take care of yourself? And being intentional, as Carl mentioned, like what spaces at my current living situation can I incorporate what I need to take care of myself? And mantras and affirmations. So I like how Aaliyah mentioned her space and how it creates a sense of connection and spirituality. And when I say spirituality, I'm not just talking about religion. I'm talking about what is it that you need to recharge? Is it time alone in nature? Is it meditation, yoga, connecting with someone over the phone or Zoom, or taking a walk with someone and checking in, journaling about your experiences, and creating a space in your home that could create some sort of relaxation for you when you're feeling stressed. So those are ways to tap into that spiritual component. And with social, I think of boundaries as a way to take care of myself. So there's a lot going on and there's so much need to advocate for change. And I think the way that we're experiencing the world right now, it feels urgent. But sometimes we need to step back and take care of ourselves and acknowledge that putting a boundary to take care of ourselves, like we don't have to go to every meeting. Maybe someone else could take that burden for you so that you could do something for yourself. Positive social media, there's so much news out there. So just like limiting the time that you're spending on social media or the news. And when we do a mental health kit, I say, okay, what days of the week or what day or what time can you listen to the media or news, and then shut it off. And let's talk about incorporating some more positive things so that, you know, you're able to feed into more positive messages as a way to take care of yourself. Asking for help. So again, I know that sometimes as a student, it feels hard, or what if that professor perceives it as I'm trying to take advantage? No, ask for help. And if that happens, then let's brainstorm of ways that you could take care of yourself. When it comes to the emotional component, stress management, forgiveness, compassion, and kindness, I talk a lot about having self-gratitude and also self-compassion. We're going through a lot, and more often than not, I have to continue to remind people we're experiencing a pandemic. So the level of stress that you're holding is completely different from where we were a year ago. And like Carl mentioned, take care of your body, your physical body. I love to remind people protecting your sleep. It's so important that you sleep well so that you could continue to do what you do throughout the day. You could compromise your sleep when you have a final or when you're studying, but long-term effects of you sleeping 2 to 4 hours, it's not self-sustainable. So let's revisit our weekly routine and form a sense of consistency so that we could continue again to do the work that we're doing throughout the day.
I see a question. What is your advice for healthcare professionals and or people in leadership roles in how they can start the conversation or be active in their ally role? I often worry that I'm going to offend someone if I bring it up first without any context or request by the person. I think it depends on where you're situated at in your organization or agency. I think, getting the leadership buy-in, if you're, one of the middle managers or you're at the upper level, going to speak to leadership and saying, hey, I think that we should hold a forum or a opportunity to engage in conversation around what does equity and diversity and inclusion looks like in our office or in our agency. And the concept of creating an environment that's welcoming to all people does not require people of color or people of underrepresented backgrounds to initiate the conversation. If you recognize that this environment may or may not be situated in an equitable lens, then it's incumbent upon you to ask the question. It's incumbent upon leadership to figure it out, because we recognize that and the results are in. When you are working and creating inclusive environments, it does well for your entity, your agency, your business, your bottom line, your dollars. Everything flows better when you are making decisions and positioning yourself to be as inclusive as possible, because you welcome in new, fresh, innovative ideas. You welcome in markets that you probably would never tapped into had you not tapped into people who come from those markets. There's a litany of different indicators that suggest that this would be good for the company and the agency. So approaching leadership and saying, hey, let's hold an informal session or even a formal session. Let's ask our staff. We can do some surveys. Let's ask the staff who the few that we do have that are from historically underrepresented backgrounds. What does this environment look like for them? Let's figure out a way to do it, maybe even anonymously, so then that we can garner up some real understanding of what it looks like, so then that we can figure out if there's some adjustments that need to be made. And sometimes it may be just a few adjustments. Sometimes the adjustment may just need to be that we have it in our mind, that is in the forefront of our mind. That's what we talk about equity mindedness. And when you're looking through an equity lens, then everything you do is just part of what you do is infused there. There's this concept called universal design as it relates to spaces, to make spaces accessible for people of varying abilities. And the concept of this is to design a space that if someone comes in with a differing or varying ability, they don't have to go and find a desk or, figure out a way to get them in the classroom. We just got to create those spaces that automatically welcome those people. So then if there's no one in the space that requires this, when they show up, it's already set up. We need to do better with universal design, but we also need to be thinking broader with it and designing it in social space, designing it in engagement, designing it to be welcoming for actual people from different backgrounds and things like that. So then that when you have a 100% almost all white university and you get your 3 people of color in, there's no adjustments that need to be made. Because right now, I had the question posed to me when I was at Platteville. There's this thought that all we got to do is get more students of color and then we'll be fine because we'll have a critical mass and then, people will do well. Well, that's just one part of it. But if you invite a bunch of people of color into an environment that's not welcoming of people of color, and you got more people of color, then you're going to have more incidents and more issues and complications. So what we have to do is, as my grandmama say, you got to clean your house up before you invite company over. So that's what has to happen in a lot of these spaces and campuses and jobs and agencies. We have to clean our homes up as we are looking to invite more people of color and historically underrepresented people, so then that we can enhance our bottom line and push whatever agenda or mission the agency is pushing.
Thank you, Grandma. Yes, I love that. I'm going to steal that. I appreciate that question, and I appreciate an earlier question that I may have missed earlier about having only a few folks of color in your classroom and wanting to be able to support them and have them make a study group, and how do I go about doing these? So Carl really spoke to that systems level change, go to leadership, shift the conditions. So I won't belabor that. But I do appreciate the question in that we don't want to prescribe the answer for folks. And I want to tell you a story that came out of this conversation. I won't play the conversation, but one of our conversations, one of the women in the conversation was experiencing some problems breathing. She was sick. She was experiencing problems breathing. And she went in, and this well-intentioned white provider was like, you're probably experiencing problems breathing because of what happened to George Floyd. And the psychological response, she was like, what? No, I'm experiencing problems breathing because I'm sick, and it's a physical thing that's happening with me right now. And this provider wasn't intentionally trying to, I'm assuming, in fact, they were probably trying to bridge this conversation about how is this showing up for you. So I'm glad that we're having this conversation, because we don't want to prescribe to anybody, just like these conversations around self-care. What you need and what I need could be different, which is why we're using this works for me, and these are general practices. So I'm happy that that was brought up. And so the beautiful thing about this diversity forum and all these conversations is that this is a perfect entry point into a conversation that begins with a question, right? I just attended the diversity forum. I just listened to this panel. I know that I have a role in this. I just don't know can we have a conversation? Can we start there? It's not come out of nowhere, and it's asking a question. It's not prescribing a solution. And that is where I think that we all can begin. I think that is a perfect entry point, and it's very timely. And so we all can leave here now today, whether it's that email that Claudia was talking about to reach out to a student or whatever it is, but to commit to one action from this forum to leave today and do, as simple as just checking in. I think that's how we can make really great movement.
Thank you for mentioning that piece, Aaliyah. I think, as I think of the work that I do, treating someone as an individual, not making assumptions about what they need before they even open their mouth is important. And I draw from personal experiences where it's happened to me, where people make assumptions about me, we're talking about healthcare and how it impacts differently with certain communities here in the US. Well, when I was 12 years old, and my mother, who barely spoke English, so sometimes I had to do a lot of the translating for her. I had a doctor tell me that I was experiencing a miscarriage. And I had to translate that to my mother at age 12. And the assumptions that were made based on me living in the inner city, that stayed with me. And so to that question of what do I do to help? Don't assume. Listen and be respectful. Everyone deserves that decency and human dignity to just be heard. So when as a therapist, my role is to create a safe space and to listen. They are the creators of their narrative, not me. And so if you are a person trying to help, let them speak their truth and help validate them. It's not helpful when you say, oh, I didn't know that. Oh, I didn't know that about you. Just listen and offer support.
I think we got just a few minutes left. The final question, how do I figure out when in a situation where there are comments being made that are covertly racist, knowing where the comments are coming from, being white myself, when to speak up? I don't want to talk over others, and I don't want someone to have to spin all their spoons when I don't spin as many pointing out racist remarks. You know, I was just having a conversation with a good friend of mine who happens to be a Trump supporter. And we talk almost twice a week, maybe. We fundamentally disagree on a lot of things. But we have points that we do agree on. But the biggest piece is that we speak and we listen to each other. Like while I fundamentally disagree with her, I know her why. I know why she's doing this. I know why she's doing that. And I know there's some fear there. There's a bunch of different, understandably human emotions. But I shudder to think that we are in a particular state that we can't talk anymore. We can't have a conversation if we disagree. The only way we can speak is if we fundamentally agree on certain tenets. And we can never grow as a society being that way. And I think, in this regard, it's the same thing. Many white people, not even just white people, many people have a difficult time seeing past their own oppression. So when we talk about race and racism and power and privilege and access, people always look back to the Ratatouille time when they were, living in a one-room shack, and as a white person or this person or a black person, all these different things, it's very difficult for people to see past their own oppression. And that's what I usually try to start with, is just trying to, hey, this might be another lens that you haven't looked through. And I'm not denying your oppression. I'm not denying the things that happen in your life. I'm just saying, hey, let's make sure that you're not perpetuating that which you are against when it comes to you. And so let's explore that conversation. And I do think that it's a delicate dance, because it's always dangerous to abruptly awaken sleepwalkers. So you have to be skillful in how you engage, but my thought, especially when it's people who people who are making comments and things like that, you are not going to have a single conversation that's going to thwart 18 to 24 years of racist or sexist socialization. You can hit the tip of the iceberg, but the ideal is that you continue to engage. If you are enlightened, then you enlighten. Right, so you do that over a period of time, and you do some challenges, you ask some questions, and then you also make yourself open to look at some things as well. with my friend, I agreed to watch Fox News for a whole segment, and yeah, it was brutal. But I agreed to do that because I want to get, this is their perspective. So they're saying, like, you know, if I tell the same way, if I tell you, go read this book, and this is where I'm getting my information from, they're saying, hey, go look at this. This is where I'm getting my information from. And there's this, see, I told you this is the right thing or whatever. And, you know, I listened to it with an open mind. I picked apart the things that I thought were just outlandish in like a fantastical way. And then I did acknowledge the things that I could, okay, I understand that. I'm not all the way there yet, but I see where you at. I think that so being able to be reciprocal in those conversations and being open to making some adjustments on your own is always, you know, you're able to I think have some teaching and learning. They say, you know, I mean, I think that piece it allows the person to know that you actually care enough. You're not there just to tell them about themselves, but you actually care and you want to see, you know, them not make these faux pas and, you know, doing the wrong thing, especially if just by virtue of their socialization, they have no idea at that particular point that they are being offensive or being racist. Because sometimes, you know, the covertness is passed down as well. And they say things and do things and don't know why. I'm not suggesting that they're not complicit in this. I'm just saying that complicity doesn't always require consciousness.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. It's been fantastic. Thank you so much, Claudia and Carl. I've enjoyed learning from you.
I've enjoyed you all as well, learning from you too.
Absolutely.
We definitely need to do this some more. Claudia,
Yeah.
you're on
Yes.
you're part of the group now. This
Yes.
is me and Aaliyah's second panel together. So Claudia, we're gonna be roping you into some more.
All right. Awesome.
Definitely. Thank everyone who tuned in to listen, and thank you for your wonderful questions. They're thought provoking, and as I said before, this is all of this work is work, and it comes from years of socialization. So this is just, you know, you learning, but the work is you hitting the books and doing work on yourself after these sessions. These are just to open your eyes, not to actually get you there. Thank you.